I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife came home from the grocery store. She saw the notebook on the table in front of me and the pen in my hand and asked, "What are you doing?" "I have decided to accept your challenge." I don't remember any arguments. Remember last week when we read those stories on that internet site? I commented on how bad some of them were and said that even I could do better. You said I couldn't. You said I don't have a creative streak. I guess I really said that, but my comment was based on what I know about your grades when we were in school. You always got a 4 and a 3 for your work in classes that required written reports, and you got a 3 for the work you had to do for business research and report writing. Well, I think I can do better. Doesn't matter. Come on, help me bring in the groceries. I helped her carry her bags and helped her put some things away. And then I sat back at the table and began to write. While preparing dinner, she asked, "What are you writing about?" she asked. "I won't say anything yet. I'll let you read it when I'm done, and you can criticize it before I put it on the site." I didn't think it would be too difficult. Yes, everything I did in college did not bring excellent grades, but then I didn't want that. I only did what I had to do to survive these classes. First of all, I didn't want to be there, but my parents more or less blackmailed me. My dad wouldn't let me work in the family business unless I had a bachelor's degree in business management. I have worked there after school and during the summers since I was 13, and I wanted to work there when I graduated from high school, but Dad said no, not without a degree. This is necessary for you to come here to work full-time. So I accepted it and went to study. I got my degree and went to work in the family business. I looked down at the notebook, picked up a pen, and began. My name is Josh Barnum. I am an aircraft mechanic for a major airline and married to Melinda Barnum. Melinda, I call her Melly, is an office manager for an insurance company. Melly and I have been together for a little over 11 years, and we've been married for 9 of those years. We met in our second year of college, and for me, it was love at first sight. And for Melly? Not so much. It took me 3 months to arrange a date with her. We started dating. On our 7th date, we made love for the first time. After that, we became a permanent couple and usually made love 2 to 3 times a week, at least until the summer between our sophomore and junior years. I had a summer job working for my Uncle Bill, who owned a landscaping company. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day from Monday to Saturday. As a result, I was rarely able to see Melly during the week. After 3 weeks of seeing each other only on Sundays, Melly started dating other guys. When I complained about it, she told me to deal with it or lose my Sundays. This was a defining moment in our relationship. I already said that when it came to Melly, it was love at first sight, so I would rather give up than lose her completely. At the time, I didn't realize what a mistake this was. This showed her that, from my point of view, she could get away with a lot, and I would have left it as is. It was 3 weeks later on a Friday, and I had only worked 6 hours before calling a break due to severe thunderstorms. I called Melly to see if she would go out with me that evening, and she told me she already had a date. I hung up without saying another word. I called around to see if anything was going on and found out that Mike Matson was having a party at his house. I called and found out that I was welcome, so I decided to go. It was a bad move on my part. I walked in just in time to see Melly hug and then kiss Dick Moore. They then went out onto the makeshift dance floor, where Melly snuggled up to Dick and they slowly danced to the song. Dick held her with both hands and pressed her tightly to him. Melly wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled his face to hers, and gave him a hot, long kiss. When the song ended, they seemed to reluctantly pull away from each other, but when they finally did, Melly saw me. She said something to Dick and then walked towards me. I turned around, walked away from her, and left the party. She may have had my number to reach me, but I'll be damned if I'm stuck here while she makes out with someone else. The weather wasn't bad on Saturday, so I ended up switching to a 12-hour day. I've learned not to waste time calling Melly on a Saturday night to set up a date for Sunday, because she'll be seeing someone. I usually called her on Sunday around 10 and arranged something for the afternoon and evening. But that Sunday morning, I didn't call. It was one thing to know that she dated when I was unavailable, but it was another thing entirely to know that she kissed her beau. The heat I noticed between her and her beau was a sign that they were probably having sex too. This put a bad thought into my head. According to what Melly told me, she hadn't been with any guy for more than 4 dates. The question I was asking myself, after what I saw with Matson, was Melly having sex with all of them? If that was the case, I might be in trouble since we usually made love on our Sunday dates. I have heard and believed that when you have sex with someone, you have sex with everyone that person has had sex with. I thought maybe getting tested for STDs would be a good idea. Figured that since Melly hadn't heard from me on Sunday morning, she might call me. I got the hell out of the house and was gone all day. When I got home for dinner, my mom told me that Melly had called twice and wanted me to call her when I got home. I waited until I finished dinner to call her. She immediately got down to business. "Why didn't you call me this morning?" "I just figured with the way you made out with that guy last time that I was replaced." "We've already talked about this, Josh. I won't stay home for premier dates just because you can't come." "I know, and I came to terms with it when I thought it was just platonic dating. But what I saw last time was way, way beyond platonic. I thought you and I had something special, but I'm not so sure anymore." "Don't say that, Josh. We really have something special. We need to talk, baby. I don't care what time you work until tomorrow, but when you are free, come to me. You will do this?" "I think I can. Promise me?" "Okay. I'll come to you when I'm free." Monday was a 12-hour workday, so I didn't get to Melly's house until just after 8. Her mom opened the door and told me that Melly was waiting for me on the patio. Melly was talking on the phone with her back to the door when I walked outside, and what I overheard before she closed her phone didn't bode well for our relationship. What I heard was, "I liked what we did on Friday. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I have to go. He'll be here soon. Bye." I walked back into the house and then opened the patio door with a lot of noise. She turned around and saw me leaving the house. I didn't give any indication that I had overheard anything. I just walked up to the table and sat down. I just looked at her and waited. She finally realized that I wasn't going to start a conversation, so she said, "What happened, Josh? You agreed to my dates when you couldn't find time." That's when I thought these dates were like going to the movies and maybe having a milkshake at Harry's afterwards. Or maybe a party like Matson's where you could dance and hang out with our friends. Simple things. For you to act like you're still my girlfriend. It's not like what I've seen from Matson. The way you kissed this guy and let him run his hands all over your body without even trying to stop him pretty much told me that if he hasn't had sex with you, he will soon. This is not how I expected my girlfriend to behave in front of my friends. It's disgusting what you're saying to me. I tell it like it is. Maybe you should just leave. It would probably be best. After what I saw and not knowing if this is how you feel about all your dates, I think it would be a good idea to get tested. I stood up and left her with a shocked expression on her face. I managed to get to my car before she caught up with me. "You don't really think of me that way, do you?" "What I saw on Friday night was pretty gross, Melly. I do not want to risk." I got into the car and drove away, and she stood and looked after me. I did get tested and turned out to be healthy, but I never called Melly and told her about it. We avoided each other for a little over a week, and then on Thursday, while I was having lunch in the student cafeteria, Melly came to my table, sat down and said, "You didn't call me on Sunday. It is not necessary." "You're being unfair, Josh. Why do you expect me to stay home 6 days a week because of your job? Maybe because I look at it as on-the-job training. What the hell does that mean? Perhaps this is to prepare you for what you may have to do after you get married and your husband has a job that requires him to work late. This is just stupid. Being married is not the same as going to school. Maybe the way you look at it, but not the way I see it. You knew all along that I intended to ask you to marry me after high school, and you led me to believe that you would say yes. You know my major is aviation maintenance management, and when I graduate, I will have my aircraft and power plant license. My goal is to work for an airline and get promoted. There's a damn good chance that if I do end up joining an airline as a new hire, I'll have the worst shift and the worst days off. If you can't handle my work schedule now, how are you going to handle my 3 to 11 shift with Tuesdays and Wednesdays off? This is different. I will work too, and we will do everything necessary to adapt to our circumstances. It's in the future if we have one. Right now, we need to survive as a couple, and I'm not sure we can, given what I now know about your dating life. We agreed to talk that evening after I finished work, and she finally gave in and said she would only party on Fridays and Saturdays and would always make sure dates were with my friends. That way, I could always ask someone if she was doing anything that wouldn't pass the boyfriend test. It helped that landscaping was a seasonal job that ended in late fall. I kept a close eye on her for the rest of our freshman year and throughout graduation. And she only lost her temper 3 times while I pretended I didn't know anything. Why? I blame it on love. When we finished school, Melly moved in with me, and we lived together while our mother prepared the wedding. It was a new experience for both of us, to be able to make love every day and not be in a rush to return home. There were nights when I was not at all sure that I would be able to get out of bed in the morning. It seemed that all Melly and I, oh yes, myself, wanted was to make love all the time, but of course we couldn't. I really got along with the airline and, as always, I had the worst shift, from 4 to midnight, with Wednesday and Thursday off. Melly had a degree in accounting and got a job at an accounting firm where she worked from 8 to 5, with Saturday and Sunday off. During tax season, from about the end of January to the 1st of May, she usually worked 10 to 12 hours a day and sometimes had to work on Saturdays. We got married 5 months after graduating from high school, and our wedding gift from both sets of parents was a down payment on a 4-bedroom house in one of the city's best neighborhoods. Neither of us wanted to have children until we were established in our jobs, so Melly used one of the bedrooms as a home office. The back of the house had a fairly large patio, and one of our first purchases after moving was a 6-person hot tub located on one side of the patio. It didn't take long before it seemed like it was always full. A month after installing the tub, we had a housewarming party, and after everyone tried out the tub, it felt like we had company over every weekend. It's not that I like this company. I had to leave at 2:45 to get to work on time. As we got to know our neighbors, we started getting invited to barbecues and picnics, and once that started, we, of course, had to host a couple of our own. We became really good friends with the neighbors on either side of us and those who live right across the street. The first 2 years, everything went great, and we adjusted to our different schedules. And then everything changed. I didn't find out about this until much later, but it was pretty much what I was talking about when I talked to Melly back in college. I worked Friday and Saturday, and Melly was tired of sitting at home on the best date nights. At first, it was a night out with the girls after work on Friday, nights she never told me about. After a couple of months, she decided that since she could get away with not knowing about her nights out with the girls, then she could get away with going out on Saturdays. She just needed to make sure she was home, in bed, by the time I got home. She started going on dates with guys she worked with and guys she met at her friends' parties. I don't know when this whole thing started, so I had no idea how long it went on, but a neighbor who lived across the street told me about it. On Friday night, after dinner, he was having drinks with a client and saw Melly dancing dirty with some guy and acting like a slut. Saturday morning, when Melly was out shopping, he came over and told me what he had seen. This upset me, but did not surprise me. He told me that his brother was a police officer who worked as a private detective on his days off, and his brother's days off were Friday and Saturday. He said his brother's rates were 25% of what a full-time private investigator would charge. So I asked him to contact me. All it cost me was that he followed Melly from Friday when she got off work until she went home, and on Saturday from the time I left for work until she came home, it cost $600, and that was worth every penny. On Friday, when Melly came home from work, she headed straight to the bar, and before she could sit down on the bar, a guy bought her a drink and danced with her. They left the bar at 8 and checked into the motel, and yes, they left the lights on for them and stayed in room 107 until 11. And then she went home. On Saturday, she didn't even leave the house. At 4, her boss came home from work, and although Spencer the cop couldn't film what was happening in the house, he did get some pretty good footage of Melly having sex with her boss, lying on the cushions of a chaise lounge on the veranda. On my first day off, I took everything I had to a divorce lawyer, and after reviewing what I had, he suggested that I contact her boss for alienation of affection and her company if the policies and procedures manual their companies know anything about the relationship between managers and those they supervise. I told him that her boss owned the company, and when I told him this, I could almost see dollar signs in his eyes. I told him to go ahead and get to work. He asked me to give him a week or so and that he would prepare the documents so that I could come and sign them. I left his office, hoping that I could act like the clueless cuckold, which I was until I received Spencer's report. I probably succeeded because next to me, Melly didn't seem any different. The lawyer called me a week later and said that he had documents ready for me to sign. When I came to his office, he smiled and said that he had very good news for me. Apparently, her boss was bragging to everyone in the office about having sex with Melly. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure the conversation we overheard was just a rumor. Basically, this is a case of him saying he didn't say anything. Maybe if it wasn't on tape. The man from whom I received the film hates Philby and is always looking for some way to harm him. Isn't there some law that says both parties must be aware of the recording? In some states, yes, but this state is not one of them. Then it's okay. Go ahead and do what you think is best. I finished the story, reread it, and decided everything was fine. I looked at my watch and saw that it was almost dinner time. I called my wife from the kitchen and gave her the story, asking her to read it and comment on it for me. She took the story from me and started reading it. About halfway through, she started to frown and finally gasped loudly, looked at me, and fainted. I stood up, took a glass of water, and splashed it in her face. She muttered something as I helped her up. Just then the doorbell rang, and I told her it was probably for her. She looked embarrassed as I walked her to the door. She opened the door and saw a young blonde girl standing. The blonde stopped chewing her gum long enough to ask, "Mrs. Melinda Barnum?" Melinda said yes, and the blonde handed her an envelope with the words, "You have been notified. Have a nice evening." And she turned and left. Melinda didn't hear the last phrase. She fainted again when she heard that she had been notified. This time I didn't bother with a glass of water. I just grabbed her leg and pulled her into the room far enough to close the door, and then I went to the